Guys, we are back with the rest round. We got again Benjamin Rothrock with us again. Butch, good to see you. Um, Last time we left off, we kind of talked a lot about history of sambo, combat jiu-jitsu, the differences between jiu-jitsu and combat jiu-jitsu, where they lie, where they don't lie. As far as competition sambo, and I know Ben, you got a lot of stuff coming up. Butch has got some stuff coming up. We're gonna try and hit all those things. But glad to have you back, man. It's good to see you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me back.
Yeah. So we were actually just kind of talking a little bit about the affliction stuff and how some things were kind of uh, if you're wearing an affliction shirt, you're kind of a douchebag or tap out because you're seeing you got that badass tap out shirt on, and so we are kind of talking about that. Let's go ahead and get into the tap out shirt and whether or not like it's douchey to wear a tap out shirt, I guess.
Well, it's definitely not douchey. Let's put that out first. But go ahead, Ben, because you're already talking about the pop culture associated with jujitsu. So let's just get right into that.
So it's, like I said, with the lifestyle apparel, it's like people became like walking billboards and ambassadors for their systems. So tap out, could be MMA, it could be really any sport where submission is a part of it, and so people ask about it. They, well, what's this? And like, it gets people interested. And I think that like the lifestyle apparel and the branding of these kind of things was one of the reasons that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu especially so successfully cornered the market with the grappling arts and combat sports to the, in as a result of UFC. And it drives me absolutely crazy that like when people see grappling on the ground, they're like, well, that's jiu-jitsu. Well, yes, it could be, but it could also be wrestling. It could be judo. It could be sambo. It's like really ultimately, grappling is grappling, wrestling is wrestling. And the only thing that changes is in my opinion, is the cut of the uniform and the rule set. But like all the moves like have overlap. But so one of the things that we've been working on, like, we're working on launching the Berserker Sambo apparel and putting things in people's hands so that, we can kind of start to do that same thing where Sambo has walking ambassadors because of the lifestyle apparel. And it's happening slowly. It's the trickle that we hope will eventually become the waterfall. But, it also means that these things will fall into the hands of posers. So we have a sambo shirt in the back that says "throw, pin, submit," and there are going to be people that are going to put that on that have never stepped on a sambo mat in a day in their life. But it can be helped.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to our conversation, right? Like, so, and here's what we were kind of talking about is that good or bad, right? And then are you a douchebag if you wear something you don't train? And that's kind of how it all started. Before we went live, that's what we were talking about. Is it was kind of cool. There was a camaraderie, meaning that you could see somebody at airport or a city, and they had a tap out shirt on or affliction shirt on. It's definitely tap out. Affliction kind of came a little bit later, but and then you could ask somebody where they trained, and almost everybody did, because at the time tap out wasn't mainstream, so you only could get tap out. Like basically if you're at a fight show, a little bit online probably from their events, those guys were still doing t-shirt shows, basically even showing up to UFC back then and basically selling t-shirts. But then that's, I think what bothered everybody was we lost that camaraderie, because it wasn't like we had to get used to it. Because now when I would say, if I saw Ben or Gary with that shirt on and I didn't know them, and I was like, hey man, where do you train? And like, it's good to meet you. And they're like, I don't train. So immediately I took my hatred out of those people. I was like, well, fuck you, which is not fair because they're fans, and that's also kind of what pushed things to the mainstream. But that's kind of what always happens, right? Like when you're a fan of a band and then all of a sudden everybody else likes them, you're kind of like pissed. You're like, well, I like them first. And you kind of go through this little process of trying to like saying, well, they sold out, and and that's what people said about Tap Out is they sold out, right? And then it just went on and on. And now you did have an Affliction, and I think now American Fighter is the thing. I see all these memes about, what if you go to BW3 and watch some fights, how people are going to be dressed, whatever. And it is true. Like, all the people that don't train, all that, wear that. Yeah, right. And none of us basically do, because now, right, it changed. Instead of us wearing those things to a degree, it's like I have a Pat Miletich shirt on right now, right? It's more like located to a gym. That's kind of how we recognize each other now. A little bit different. Doesn't mean I'm against that stuff. Now I am, unfortunately, don't wear Affliction, just so you know, because I think that started. I was at a Chelsea Handler comedy event in Cleveland, and I don't forget what she said, but she's like, "How do you spot a douchebag?" And then it was like they'll wear Affliction shirt, and then like everybody's looking at me. I was like, well, "Fuck, I guess that's me." And so that was the day I found out you don't wear those no more. So
what it is kind of interesting.
Like you see like one of your guys like, you're wearing a Tap Out shirt, like some, brand new white belt poser. He got his first gi and like 6 Tap Out shirts all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say it is kind of interesting because most other sports, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, even soccer, baseball, all of them are spectator sports. And if we really want the sports that we love to be raised into that kind of prestige, whether it be MMA, Sambo, Jiu-Jitsu, even wrestling, right? I think the way you do that is with spectatorship. It's done with the dollar of the viewer. It's not done with the guys who compete. And the guys who are making millions in the NFL aren't making millions in the NFL because they're great athletes. They're getting millions partially because they're great athletes, but really it's because people are willing to pay money to go see them. That's why they're getting money. It's the only reason they're getting money. And
it's why the wrestling programs at colleges have such a hard time maintaining traction, is because the college teams, the football team, the basketball team, people pay money hand over fist and buy season tickets, for their teams, especially like Winston-Salem, one town over for me, Wake Forest University, that they have a huge football, basketball following there. Like they have to play in the bloody LJVM Coliseum to accommodate all the fans. I defy you to fill up 10% of the seating with a Demon Deacons wrestling meet. It's just not going to happen.
And there's starting to be a little bit of a change where we are starting to see that kind of that type of support in wrestling. I know, and I come from Ohio originally, and Ohio State just built a new facility just for their wrestling program, I believe. And so they got the Ohio State Buckeyes have a new facility they wrestle in and whatnot, and they actually get butts in the seats. But it's only the elite big programs that are perennial national champion hopes. So your Penn States, your Ohio States, your Iowa States, those Oklahoma, those places are putting butts in the seats as far as wrestling goes. But there's not a lot, and it for the lack of better words, we kind of, and I do it myself too, I kind of shit on the people who are fair weather fans and only watch MMA because of Conor McGregor. And I kind of shit on those guys that like, you don't know anything about it, but I should be celebrating the fact that at least Conor McGregor got them to watch, and maybe they'll learn something about jiu-jitsu, or maybe they'll learn something about Sambo. Like, I should be glad that they're there to see Khabib, fighting and not being like, you're jumping on board at the last second. And I've been here for 15 years watching the UFC, or 20 years watching the UFC. And I don't know. There is, rather than being so poo-poo on those guys, I should be celebrating the fact that they're finally here.
But I think, like, I'm old school in this way, is that, someone like Conor McGregor is not a representation of the Bushido code that is, to me, is supposed to be inherent with high level full contact competition. And Khabib's a little closer, but like if you kind of look at like some of the flaming that he's doing now, like he's kind of edging in some of that heat building direction.
Yeah.
But that's also the nature of professional fighting. You know, anything where, you know, the objective is to sell pay-per-views, you've got to build heat. You've got to get people to want to buy those tickets. So Conor McGregor running his mouth is one of the ways that they do that, and they kind of encourage it. And I tend to shy away from it. Like, you know, like I've kind of like, I really like the Bushido and the respect as a part of like judo competition, you know, and I like the Bushido and the respect that is like strictly enforced in Sambo competition. You know, but like the chest thumping tribalism, you know, is something that I don't care for, you know. So, but that's I'm old school that way. So I think that like the fan that gets attracted, you know, like the outsider fans that are like not people that train, that someone like Conor McGregor and, you know, attracts like almost like the pro wrestling fans.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, purists, like, you know, like old school people have been training, you know, our whole life, like the three of us, kind of, you know, that it just kind of like it's like sandpaper, you know, it's just uncomfortable.
No, well, on that thought too, is that what draws you to the sports that you're in? I mean, you kind of answer that question, right? And that's why you like judo and sambo, but is that, I think in order to keep that, because like you said, it's a double-edged sword, right? To make somebody buy pay-per-views, and not just that is a major thing, but like Colby Covington's a prime example. If the story that they say is true, right, that's not his personality whatsoever. It's all an act, and that act kept him in the UFC, and that act is what's, you know, sold pay-per-views and kept him on the roster. So that's kind of the part of the game is, and I had fighters like this before when I was training fighters. I had a guy that was 155. Ryan Shank was his name. He's amazing, right? Like, great wrestler, great at jiu-jitsu, great at everything. And I mean, right off the bat, he could go in and win titles in his first fight. You know, like he was just overmatched for people. The problem was, he was not flashy, right? He just went in, took people down, ground and pound. It wasn't super exciting. It was hard to get him on shows because at the time it was illegal to have shows in West Virginia. MMA was illegal. So for us to go out of state, like they also, like when you're fighting out of state, they want you to lose. Let's just be honest, right? Like I'm coming in to fight the hometown hero, or Ryan is. So if they kind of know that you're a wrestler and you're good, then it's even harder to get on the show. So you're not going to sell tickets per se if you're from West Virginia going to, you know, far out Kentucky or all these places. So and that was my point with him. I remember telling him, because he would get frustrated because he'd have a lot of people pull out and couldn't get fights, and he would, you know, it would really hurt his feelings. And so, you know, this goes down to the marketability, and he hated that stuff too. He's much like us. He's like really old. He's like, yeah, but that's stupid. And all those guys that do that, I can whoop their ass. I mean, yes, I know that, but you have to play the game. If you're not going to play the game, you're not going to get the fights. Like, this is part of the game. And ultimately, it just didn't work for him, right? Like, it worked in his skill level. But as far as getting fights and then, you know, like, you know, it just couldn't happen, right? It was a bummer, man. It's because it is the double. And I'll be honest, I'm one of those people. I watch, I hate saying it. That's why I was like stumbling. I watch some of those Jake Paul fights, but those are mostly because of my kids. I'm just throwing it out there. But I am slightly entertained by that sometimes. Like, you know, like I watched the Tyron Woodley fight, and I'll probably watch this upcoming thing. My kids love it, you know. But I am a consumer. I watched when Jose Canseco was fighting that, you know, all these giants or whatever. I'd watched them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm guilty of it, you know.
Pride was the master of putting together those freak show fights that sold tickets.
Yeah, the rumor is too, like, I don't know if it's true, but Dana White's asking that Hasbullah to fight the little person,
little guy.
Yeah, so if that's true, and it looked like I can make any screen, you know, but they had a screenshot of Dana talking to somebody. I can make that. You guys can make that. Doesn't mean it's true, but if it is true, they're going to venture in a little farther into the circus fights. And that's fun. You can't say that they haven't. And before, you know, James Toney's fought, Brock Lesnar was not supposed to be a winner, right? He was thrown into the mess to get his ass kicked, and he just happened to do well. but it looks like, you know, if Hasbulla fights, that's full on circus.
Brock Lesnar was a high level collegiate wrestling champion, and I think that they underestimated him. You know, I would have told him, like, you guys are bringing in someone that, like, you know, had like over 100 wins in his collegiate career. And you think he's gonna go down easy? No.
No, yeah, he was not a CM Punk, right? Like CM Punk had no, to my knowledge, no really martial arts to his credit. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he didn't wrestle or any, you know, real wrestle or anything.
I think at the time that CM Punk went in, he was only like a blue, maybe a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or something like that. But he is relatively new to jiu-jitsu and for lack of a better word, real grappling.
Right.
Yeah. You know, he was it's one thing to parkour off the top rope, but it's completely different to get in there with somebody and mix it up.
Yeah, and to keep it like, you know, that is one part of the thing that's kind of weird, right? So I would also imagine, I know all of us are probably the same, but we like the UFC, but my consumption of the UFC is probably not what it was in 1993. You know what I'm saying? I didn't miss an event, right? And now I feel kind of guilty at the gym, especially the young kids. They're always like, man, did you watch that fight? They name people I don't even know who they are. And I have to just tell them, I'm like, look, kids, I'll just be honest with you. I don't know who these people are, and I don't really watch that often. Like, there's a period where my people kind of retired, which was the GSP and the Anderson Silva and those guys. And that's why they didn't talk. Like, they're quiet, but their skill set spoke for itself. And I like those guys, and they're gone. Doesn't mean I don't like some of the new guys, but my enthusiasm's dropped, right? Like, I'm just not going to tune in for Usman and and they're awesome. They really are. It's hard for me to tune in for that. I guess I've lost that spark.
There are certain fighters that I get emotionally invested in, like Kayla Harrison is one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is an ambassador for judo, and before her, Ronda Rousey was an ambassador of judo before the wrong people got a hold of her and got in her head.
I love Miss Ronda. She was amazing.
She showed what Olympic level judo is capable of in professional mixed martial arts. Because the Olympic level judo, you know, someone that's good enough to get on the medal stand in the Olympics, that is a whole other planet than like club judo. And Olympic level judo, and that is on par with their wrestling counterparts. And like her and Kayla Harrison have demonstrated, you know, how good American judo can be and how well judo can perform in professional mixed martial arts when it's at that level, you know. So I emotionally invested in them for that reason. And of course, Khabib has made what I do a lot easier because of Khabib. I'm seeing people from MMA backgrounds want to know more about the Sambo thing, you know, or because they're, you know, people my age know who Fedor is, but like a guy 5 years younger, 10 years younger, like, does not know who Fedor is, but they know who Khabib is, you know. So,
were you a fan of Caro Parisian and Manny Garbrandt, or Manny? What? That's not how you say
Manny
his name.
Garbrandt, yeah. Manny Gambiri.
Gambiri.
I was a fan of Caro Parisian.
Man, Manny was he was hard to like. He might be a nice person, but his personality that I saw on TV was hard to like. But I'd say what they all did, including Ronda, was show, and it goes back, you know, like especially in jiu-jitsu right now, it's somewhat annoying, kind of, because there's this thing where people want to pit no-gi versus gi jiu-jitsu almost, right? Like, I kind of get it, yeah. And my thought, and I've just got done talking to people at my gym about this, is that, look, I just think jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. You take the gi off, like, it doesn't matter if you like one or the other. It's still like jiu-jitsu or grappling, you know. But that all being said, is I think for me at least, I just assumed you couldn't really do judo without the gi. I'll be honest. I mean, I was naive. And then when Ronda and Caro and Manny come out there and just dropping people on their head like left and right, it seemed like one mistake in a clinch, you were just thrown across the damn cage, and it was amazing. again, for me, who I thought like I thought I had a handle on stuff, I was like, well, damn, I have to
You
rethink
have
this whole thing.
the transition from collar sleeve to over under.
Yeah,
That's the main thing, is what I would tell anyone, is going from collar sleeve to over under. And and the lecture goes on to include that wrestling takedowns are easier to learn because they are simpler,
mm-hmm.
but they are also more speed and athleticism intensive. So they will make you tired faster, especially if you don't get it right away. Whereas the judo takedowns are harder to learn because they're more timing and precision intensive. But once you have them, they are relatively effortless. And it's one of the most dangerous weapon sets to have in your back pocket to go against a high level judoka that's really put the years in. Like it's just impossible. Especially if they're old school and like they still had that 30% of their time devoted to mat work. That was what Kano's original formula was. It was supposed to be 70% standing, 30% ground. And right now a lot of your modern judo is more like 90% standing, 10% ground, and BJJ is like 99.9999999% ground, and we'll dust off a tired old single leg the week before a tournament, maybe.
It's right. It's for anybody that gets mad at that, they're stupid, because it is true. And then that doesn't mean that's every school, but it's true, right? Most of them just say, well, don't worry about takedown. You can just sit down or pull guard, or you know what I mean? Like it's it's one of those things. Yeah.
Black belt BJJ guys that like have never scored a takedown in their competitive career.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're like, well, let's pull, and they'll tell you like, hey, can we start standing? Yeah, but I'm just going to pull guard. Like, okay.
Yeah, kind of makes it tough.
So it's like that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What I was going to ask though, before I cut you off, is how much time do you spend on the over under then? If you're doing judo, do you stop and say, okay, it would be comparative jujitsu, and then when we do nogi, then you go nogi. Is that what you do? Do you ever have a nogi day in judo and you say, well, this is for the street or something like that? Or
I have such a mixed bag of students that like I'll have people in the class without a gi on or without a kurtka on. Really all this stuff is impossible to separate. So it's like with anything that I show, like if this guy over here has an MMA fight about to come up, or this person's a nogi guy, then I will show like, okay, this is a nogi version of this. This is how you have to do it differently. And especially anyone that's going through my coach certification program, they better be able to articulate those things. So it all taught together. And like what I am personally working on always kind of depends on what I have coming up next. Because the gripping sequences for judo are different than sambo. Different penalty, like sambo doesn't really have gripping penalties. We can go one-sided. We can do like pistol grip. We can hold on to the belt as long as we want. There's nothing stopping that. Whereas in judo, it's like there are certain things that you're not allowed to do for a certain amount of time. So I kind of have to adjust based on whatever I've got coming up next. But I think it makes me better, more all around, like I can adapt to whatever it is. Like right now, I'd really like to not have to wear gi pants again for a while. Like, cause it's like, when I'm preparing for judo, I wear gi pants. I train barefooted because the proprioception under my feet is different than like when I'm wearing sambo shoes. But like, if you've been wearing the full gi, like your whole career, and you get ready to go do a sambo tournament, and that cold air hits your legs for the first time when you step out on the mat and shake the guy's hand, like psychologically it does something to you. So like I always kind of like just down to that level of detail is like how I adjust what I personally do.
Yeah.
If that answers.
Well, we've kind of talked about that though before on here, and when we had talked to the listeners, like if you're going to compete, you should prepare. Your training should be preparing you for the experiences that you, as close as possible, that what you're going to encounter. So if you're going to get ready for an MMA fight, you shouldn't be doing gi jiu-jitsu. Maybe not completely get rid of it, but like your focus should be on MMA training. Or if you're going to do a Samba match, you should be dressed in Samba. And I've told my guys that, listen, if you're getting ready for an MMA fight, come to all the you should be here at all the no-gi stuff. You should be at all the MMA practices and sparring practices, and you shouldn't be concentrating on the gi because it's pointless for what you're getting ready for.
Right. In that case, the gi really only serves for helping to cut weight. Just an extra layer. But when it's time to spar, it's like even the rash guard provides a degree of friction that when you're slick and bare chested that you don't have. So I always make the guys spar like slick. Like if you're getting ready for MMA, when it's time to spar, you need to spar slick. You can wear all the extra layers for drilling to sweat more, but you need to be used to the feeling of being able to whip an arm out or just how hard it is to keep a grip on somebody. And it just depends on what you're getting. I mean, anybody coming from my club is obviously going to have like a smash and smother, clinch them up, dirty boxing, kind of approach, so they need to be able to maintain that and know how it's different.
So do you think, because obviously you do judo and sambo and jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and among other things, do you think that's because you have a more open mind? So if somebody did just judo, for example, and again, I'm being a little bit more, it's a generalization, right? How apt do you think somebody from judo or sambo, since those are two arts that I don't do, are they willing to say, okay, here's the no-gi version? Or do they say, like, no, we're doing judo, so this is judo, right?
Sambo was willing to do that.
They are, okay. So they're Sambo a little bit more open-minded, you think? Obviously, because they've got Fedor and could be
Sambo will cross over anywhere.
Okay.
Sambo guys will do anything. They will turn up in odd places. Judo guys, and this is probably why I'll never make above fourth dan.
Yeah.
Is because they're so focused on, I have to do these events to acquire these points. If it isn't going to get them points on the ladder towards their next promotion, they're not going to do it.
It's almost too traditional, right? Or do you think the Olympics has got it by the balls in a way, right? Because it's like
that is a contributing factor, but I can tell you this, that like Newaza divisions, which is like their own version of ground fighting, and then like because submission and groundwork is a part of judo. 2 out of 3 ways to win are on the ground. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that judo is judo chop, or judo is standing up and Brazilian jiu-jitsu is on the ground. It's just not true. You can win with a pin and you can win with a submission in judo. You just have to be, quick about getting there. But the Newaza, to kind of revive judo's mat work component that has been ignored, I'd say, for the last 20 to 30 years, is that those are starting to happen. They're going to have their own version of submission grappling at President's Cup as an exhibition. Doesn't count towards ladder points for the Olympics, but like the individual wins will count towards promotion. So it's not Brazilian jiu-jitsu exactly. Like you will be penalized 2 points for pulling guard. That's one difference. And then like if a guy completely separates and breaks your grips and wants to stand up, you are obligated to stand back up with them. The biggest point blocks are for takedowns. But once it's on the ground, there will be positional points, and it will stay on the ground as long as you're able to keep it on the ground moving towards a submission. Like you will not get an ippon from a throw in their submission grappling divisions coming up at this President's Cup. I think that these are good things because I think that it's kind of forcing, they're using this one to kind of reach out to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu cousins, but these are all techniques that are a part of classic judo and they need to be trained. So I got real mad at a judo guy the other day that came to one of my classes, and we've done all the stand-up stuff I wanted to do. I'm like, okay, let's do some mat work. Who's got questions for the ground? And he says, show me the triangle choke in the arm bar that like the jiu-jitsu guys do. And I looked at him and I said, okay, when you say Juju Katami and then some Kaku Jimi, magically these jiu-jitsu techniques are still judo.
Yeah.
This is still judo. This is allowed in your rule set. So, don't be that judo guy that only does stand up and has no mat work. That was my message to him. So again, there's that overlap. Like all this stuff is the same stuff. That's, to me, it's all Jitsu with the capital J and no hyphen. But they're just different branches of the roots going down. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a definitive emphasis on mat work. Judo is that 70%, 70-30 blend if it's done the way Kano intended. Sambo is just with a Russian accent and shorts.
But I like it. And that's it. I actually like, personally, it doesn't mean that I like it as far as competing wise, but I like the fact that they're trying to make, they're penalizing. ADCC does the same. If you pull guard, it's a negative point. And I see it on both sides. Like if I was, trying to be devil's advocate or, say something for jiu-jitsu, I get it. Cause it's the same thing. Like a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, wrestlers will go and they're just looking to take down and collect points and never grapple. Right. And so the jiu-jitsu guy's like, look, you're in a jiu-jitsu tournament, come to the ground. And the other guy's like, no, get up. Right. And then it becomes like, like, that guy's going to take you down, but we're not in a wrestling tournament. We're in a jiu-jitsu tournament. So, like, you can look at it on everything.
And I would say that wrestler, I'm like, if that's the way you want to play, go do something.
Yeah, and that's what that's why I like the ADCC rule set.
That strategy is acceptable there.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it, maybe a -1 penalty for a guard pull, but once it goes to the ground, this is jiu-jitsu. The point of jiu-jitsu is the emphasis on the ground. Okay, so you lose 1 point. Now he's obligated to sweep in order to get back into the green. Like kind of what Ranger Up's doing, and like Hickson was talking about making that a part of the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation rule set.
Yes.
But I mean, or just cut out the middleman, just have him start from a knee. Like folk style. Or something like folk style. And okay, this is how we're going to play. Since you don't want to play takedowns, we're going to make everybody has to do mat work. And then no one gets shamed for pulling guard.
Yeah, and ultimately that's the problem. It's the fact that this is a sport. All these rule sets are a sport, and then somebody figures out a way to kind of skirt the rules, right? Like the same thing happens to jiu-jitsu. Like somebody will get a takedown, or anything, right? And they'll be up 2-0, and then they just lay on a guy for 5 minutes and they win. And the argument would be, well, you couldn't get out. That's not my fault, right? But then the other argument would be, I came to watch jiu-jitsu. I didn't come to watch a guy lay on a guy for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It's like, it goes everywhere.
That's jiu-jitsu.
I mean, that's the thing.
I mean, you find it in everything, though. It's finding the loopholes, right? I mean, whether it's tax code or if it's if you're a downed opponent in MMA, I put my knee on the floor. You can't knee me in the head now.
Yeah.
And if you do knee me, then John Jones has his first loss.
Yeah.
I think everybody finds the loopholes, or not everybody, but there are always going to be people looking for loopholes in the rules. And unfortunately, in every sport, we have loopholes that can be taken advantage of. And I think for me, it's just minimizing those loopholes as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see in the rules. Is I don't want to see as many loopholes. I don't want to see it to be exploited. And there have been a lot of people who have exploited them. I've argued that the eye poke in MMA is the most ridiculous thing, along with not so much the shot to the groin, but the eye poke, especially guys who are fingers out. I don't even know why that is. If you get a warning after the warning, you poke somebody in the eye again, like, why is that even a thing? Or take out the fact that eye poke's a thing. Just let them fight. It's frustrating to see how it because it's just like a pitcher's strike zone, or a referee's strike zone. How it's up to that referee to decide how big the strike zone is or where the strike zone is. It's too much. I don't like things that are ambiguous. You know, that's the reason I don't watch figure skating. It's the reason I don't watch gymnastics. Not because they're not like the people who do that stuff are probably some of the most athletic people in the world. But you have artistic interpretation. Like, what the hell is that?
The judging for it is very subjective.
It's very subjective. I don't want that. I want us all to have as few rules as possible. Tell me what we are allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, and let's let it happen.
We will watch our student populations dwindle by a good 75%.
No, yeah, that might be the best thing you've said, because that's why we're all floating around the same thing, right? Like if things were easy, then we'd be back in the gladiator days. There'd be no rules and everything else, and that's like when you mention Hickson, that's what they say, right? That's what it's like. I want Vale Tudo, no holds barred, right? That's what he always says. That's why they don't like. He doesn't even like. I mean, that's their relatives that do IBJJF, and they hate it, because it's a rule set. And look, I'm kind of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu traditionalist because I started with Royce Gracie and Helio Gracie and stuff, right? I see their point, man. They're like, we fight. No, like there was a time, I'll be honest too, even when I trained with them, I was like, man, I'm getting sick of them saying that, because that's when like Sakuraba was beating them, with a certain rule set. And I was like, they're just making excuses. And I was literally training with Royce Gracie at the time. So it's like, if anything, I should have been on his side, because that's my team. But I was like, man, he's killing all you guys. Like, sounds like you're making mistakes. But then I went back. I'm like, no, I see what you're saying, right? Like, because I have all those fights, like where they, they're in guard because they have to be in guard, right? Because they're 120 pounds and they wait for an hour till you get tired, and then they win, right? Or try to win.
The Gracies were notorious for being really meticulous about what rule set got agreed to, like for every individual fight. It's like almost like the rules for every fight had to be negotiated in contract.
Yes.
They were notorious for that. And like I'm sure you guys have heard Bill Superfoot Wallace's commentary on UFC 1.
Yeah, I heard about it. Yeah,
I've met
it's a little different.
I've met him twice. Like, I've done 2 Bill Wallace seminars. Interesting character, that guy.
Yeah, I've got some good stories about several people. Yeah, like and I would say exactly what you just said. It's like, it's interesting, right? I don't want to elaborate all the time, but it's interesting, right?
But yeah, but like I get it. It's like the development of BJJ though was, like, in my opinion, really heavily influenced by the commentators for those UFCs. How many times did you hear someone in like commentating on a Royce Gracie match say something to the effect of, "Can he solve the Gracie guard?"
Yeah.
And so everybody was like, that's the coolest thing, the Gracie guard. So it wasn't the top game that got all of the innovations throughout Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's development. It wasn't side control and top mount and back mount. It was the guard. Okay. We don't have 50-50 mount and lasso mount and De La Riva mount and butterfly mount and X mount and donkey mount. We have 50-50 guard and lasso guard and butterfly guard and De La Riva guard and X guard and donkey guard. And it's my feeling that came from the fact that, like, that was the part that everybody pointed out. And like, I got to spend some time with Joe Morera, Professor Joe, a couple of weekends ago. And he was in one of the UFCs. Like, he was an understudy of Marco Ruas. And the reason he didn't go to the finals is he was in the semi. He won the semis, was going to the finals. His wife went into labor and said, "If you aren't here for the birth of your child, I will not give him your name." So, needless to say, there is a Joe Jr. in the world, and I've met him too. Very nice kid. He's training to be a doctor. I say kid, he's in his 20s. And he would say, everybody want to pull quad. Everybody learn to pull quad. Like, you pull quad MMA fight, you go hospital. IBJJF, they ruined jiu-jitsu. It's all about point advantage. No more self-defense. Like, that's, and he's, there's only one person left above Joe in his lineage, and that's Francesco Mansour, who was one of the only 6 people promoted to black belt by Helio that wasn't also named Gracie. So, Joe was one of the people that kind of developed the tournament circuits and the organizations, but he does not like the direction it's gone. Like he's not even a member. He doesn't even have a charter with the IBJJF. He's a non-IBJJF instructor.
Well, it's a good question because Joe Morera's got one of the, for guys like us, we know his legend. We know his status. I know it. I'm sure Gary does. But I would venture to say all these new people have no idea who that is, because there was a time that Joe Morera was super famous, and I think it was because him and Roy Dean were like the first to kind of come up with a curriculum, and that kind of really helped, right? And so I would meet a lot of people just randomly before this Gracie University stuff, rather, whatever your thoughts are on that. Like, not meaning yours, but everybody's thought. Like, it's so polarizing. I don't want to get into the Gracie University stuff, but Joe Morera and Roy Dean's system was not that. It was a pretty legit system, right? And it still is. And Joe, he was going to the Arnold Classic back in the day in Ohio. It's some legendary stories. So would you consider? So if he's under Marco Huas, would he consider himself? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Would he consider himself a lucha libre guy? Is he still jiu-jitsu guy, or are they just friends? Because Marco is kind of on the lucha libre side, right?
He sees Marco as like his Valley Tudo mentor.
Okay. Yeah, and for people that don't know the history, I mean, there's a big clash and rivalry between jiu-jitsu and lucha libre, but like it's still kind of confusing. Like I know all the history about it. I read all the, I know those guys. I read the books. I know all that, but it's still kind of confusing to me because they're all like if you look at it with an eye of today, it's pretty much the same stuff, right? Like it's just those guys did a little bit more no-gi and leg locks, is what I would say. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
What lucha libre was? Yeah,
more wrestling.
Yeah, and they were, that's the thing. I don't have the viewpoint of the lucha libre side. I have the viewpoint of the jiu-jitsu side because that's where my lineage is with the Gracies. So, but I also know that, you got to be on it. Like everything you do, if you're only hearing your side, like if I'm a Republican and I only watch Fox News, then I have to be careful of what I repeat as news. And I'm saying that for the jiu-jitsu side, what I hear is from my people. So I don't know the lucha libre side. I just know like, hey, we fight them and we beat them all the time. That might not necessarily be the case in the real world, because again, I fully admit that those are my people, and I've only heard their side. And I've watched some great fights, Eugenio Tato and all those guys. I loved Marco Huas, to be honest, and that fight he had he did leg kicks with Paul Varlins, I believe it was, and
it was a long, grueling match.
Yeah, rest in peace.
About leg kicks, with the kickboxing class that I teach, that you can't just eat these. You can't just keep sustaining these, like block, evade, but don't just eat leg kicks. And this is why.
No, well, and that's the funny thing, right? Because he's essentially a jiu-jitsu guy, but I would say that because of him, I respect Muay Thai and leg kicks, right? Like, honestly, because that was my, like, if it wasn't on the UFC, I didn't really, I didn't follow Muay Thai. So that's what, and then Pedro Hizzo came, who was a student of his, and then, his leg kicks were crazy, his head kicks were crazy. Those guys did a lot for Muay Thai as much as they did for jiu-jitsu. Actually, I would honestly say they did more for Muay Thai than they did jiu-jitsu, because most of their fights were on the feet, right? Marco Huas was throwing leg kicks, and Pedro Hizzo, and even though they were black belts in jiu-jitsu, it's like he didn't really, they chose to do the game that we see today, right? Like everybody knows jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it was really more like having all ranges. Like they would kind of pick a guy apart based on hit them where they ain't, whatever skill set they didn't have, and of course if you're fighting a bigger person, you got to break their wheels down. You don't want to just stand in the pocket and bang. You got to start breaking down their foundation. So yeah, I can dig all that, and it's what it is. So
do you have speaking of that, do you have any cool Joe Morera stories then? I guess, I mean, you're a black belt under him. Am I correct? Right? I remember that from last time. Yes, I'm sure you guys talked a bunch. Do you have anything that you can remember off the top of your head? People love those kind of things. If you can remember anything,
Like I did my black belt testing with him in Hawaii,
mm.
and so like the first time I went
place to do a test, huh?
Well, there's the tourist Hawaii, and then there's the real Hawaii, and
Yeah.
I went to the real Hawaii, Schofield Army Barracks, Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's another planet, you know. It's not all lays and hula girls and no, like, you know. So my immediate coach. So it's like there's Joe, then there's Kylie, and then there's me. And Kylie is a Hawaiian. He's from the island. And so I was sleeping on mats in his home dojo in his garage, which that's a very common thing there. And like he lives across the street from a public park where the street gangs go to settle their beefs. Like, you know, he has to go out there, guns drawn, like probably once or twice a week to break up like some pretty bloody fights. Like that's the part of Hawaii that I was in. And it was like 3 8-hour days. It was rough. One of the things that I had to do was I had to have 100 separate techniques prepared to demonstrate, and they had like a certain number from every position. And like, so as I'm preparing for this, like I'm recording these techniques like in sets and sending them to Kai to be approved. Like, yes, those are good. Those will work. And I had like them, and I was just rehearsing. And then Joe has like his principles from top and his principles from bottom that you have to be able to recite and demonstrate in practical exercise. Like, you know, this, like when I'm on bottom, I get my head offline. I use my levels of defense. I use my appropriate snaking technique, which is the word that he uses for shrimp because snake sounds stuffer. And he's got like 6 different ones. And everybody thinks of the shrimp as like this, right? Joe has 6 different separate methods for 6 different things that you can use in different places. So if you're on bottom, the principles that you need to be remembering is I need to get my head offline, get my levels of defense back, use the appropriate snaking technique, and I don't resist him pushing or pulling. Wherever he wants to go, I let him go, but I give him more of it than he wants so that I can go someplace else, right? So it started out, you know, he was late getting to the PA. So they started me out like I was teaching like a 2-hour block to Kai's students on like De La Hiva guard and crab guard and all the stuff that comes off of that, right? Well, Joe shows up and we start going, and he takes us through this old man does 1,000 crunches to begin every workout.
That's a lot.
Different ones in different sets, so obliques on both sides, but you will do no less than 1,000 crunches to initiate a Joe Morera class. And he's like 60. And so I've already been on the mat for 2 hours, and it's Hawaii and it's hot. And so we do his 1,000 crunches. And then he wants me to go into my 100 techniques. And he starts throwing things out. Like, no, that's not what I want. Do something else. And like, my little computer goes blank. And I'm like trying to make stuff up on the fly. Like, I was like, try to get Kai to distract him. And then I would just like speed through a move real quick and be like, when he wasn't looking, be like, you know?
Yes.
I think I got like twice. I think he got bored. I think he just eventually got bored. And like, you know, because I'm pretty sure that he had seen like all the videos that like I was composing to prepare for this. And then they wanted me to do an hour-long Shark Tank, and they had 12 Hawaiians of various shapes and sizes lined up to just start rotating through.
Yeah.
And then they figured out that I was taking people down and laying on them and resting. So if I didn't move to a spot fast, they'd stand back up, or, you know what, Ben, let him get on your back. And I'm like, no. So that we finally wrapped up somewhere around 9 o'clock at night. and Joe wanted to go eat, and Joe is full of like jokes, and then they're what makes him so funny is English is very obviously his second language. And he looks at me and he says, he calls me big boy. I'm big boy. He's like, hey, big boy. He said, God not make you so pretty in the face, but he make you very strong. And I'm so glad he make you strong. Yeah. Kai just absolutely fell out of his chair. He was laughing. I think that Joe actually knows my real name. I think that he puts it on the certificate the way Kai writes him. But like if Kai says big boy from North Carolina, Joe knows exactly who he's talking about. And like when I saw him a couple of weeks ago, he saw me walk in. He's like, hey, big boy, come give a hug.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's terrific. He's terrific. And just the first time I met him, it was at like a luau. It was like a real luau, like at someone's house. And they have luau's are fun because they have some of like the more Polynesian like pit barbecue, but they also have like a lot of Korean cuisine too because it's Hawaii, so there's like both, right?
Yeah.
And they had a Motown cover band playing, and
it's so strange, isn't it? Like that doesn't fit. Yeah.
Real Hawaii, not the pretend Hawaii.
Yeah.
And Joe's wife is like dancing, and like Professor Sam Luke, who's a Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu professor, he's no longer with us, God rest his soul, but he was just like this tiny little, Hawaiian Japanese man, and he was like 80 million years old, and like him and Joe's wife are dancing, and me and Joe are sitting there on the sidelines like this. And Joe knows who I am because we're supposed to be, I'm like fresh off of like 16 hours of transit. I'm exhausted, jet lagged like across like 4 time zones.
Yeah.
And like we're sitting there and there's like nothing to talk about. He looks over at me and he's like asking me about people that I know from North Carolina. He's like, you know Vernon? I'm like, yes, Professor, I know Vernon.
Yeah.
30 seconds goes by. You know Hubio? I'm like, yes, Professor, I know Hubio. Then we decided to talk about something else. He's like, you know Daily Hebergard? Yes, Professor, I know Daily Hebergard. And this conversation went on like this for like 30 minutes.
Riveting conversation, right?
He's a man of few words. He's a man of few. He's very kind. He's again, we say he's old school. And he really, really knows his stuff. And like his level of detail and his attention to detail is insane, but he's just not a boastful kind of person. He's a family man. He hangs out, with his kids and works out in his garage with his son. And that's and he likes sitting on the beach and drinking beer and eating hamburgers. And, he's just a super cool guy. And he opens his clinics. He always says, I'm going to teach you some of the jiu-jitsu that I know. Like, not that he knows everything, not that he is the keeper of the way. He's like, I'm going to teach you what I know. Like, and just, so even his approach to opening up his clinics is just, it's humble. Like he is, you can tell that he's grateful that people care about who he is. So those are some of my Joe Morera stories.
So how old is Joe currently? Do you know by chance?
Early 60s.
Is he a coral or red belt now, or?
Yes,
he is.
He's an 8th degree. So he just got it in the last year or two. It's been recent. So the only person left is Francesco. Yeah,
it's amazing, and it actually, the more that we talk. While you're talking, it actually kind of hurts my heart a little bit that there's a lot of people that don't know who he is, right? And it's pretty common in the old school guys. If you don't have the last name Gracie, you're almost forgotten, right? And I remember like this is probably early 2000s. I bet you we had this Kaiki down, same thing, and he used to train at Torrance, and I think he kind of got kicked out of Torrance because he wasn't following their curriculum. And the rumor is he was teaching privates and he was showing people things that they could beat like some of the Gracies with. This is the rumor. This is a story from Kaiki back in 2000s, and I may not be remembering it correctly, but anyway, he said he got thrown out because he taught some people some stuff, and then these Navy SEALs, I think Frank Cucci and a couple other guys that they all have their black belts, but they were able to beat some of the famous Gracies, and they kind of got kicked out. And anyway, at the time, he was thinking about trying to make us a Kaiki affiliate, and ultimately we didn't. I was under Hoist at the time, and really, I'll be honest with you, I went with Hoist back in the '90s, not because Hoist is not awesome. So I just want to make sure this don't sound shitty, but Hoist had the name value, right? So like when I went on my own, like I'm thinking if I want legitimacy, I'm going to be under Hoist Gracie. That way, when somebody thinks of Butch Hiles, they're going to be like, well, he's under Hoist. Well, shit, he must be amazing. And I was also thinking of, if I had to look up a school in West Virginia and I had the choice of blah, 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 and this one's under Hoist Gracie, I'm probably going to pick the Hoist Gracie one, right? It's kind of multiple reasons, right? Hoist was awesome. That's the thing. I just want to make sure people, like, I'm not under Hoist now, but without Hoist, there would be no me, right? Because that's what drew me to MMA, and that's what drew me to Jitsu. It was the whole UFC, which was invented by Horian and all those guys, right? Like, we all know the story. So I'm thankful that I did all that, and it's great. And I've moved on, and I moved on not because of anything bad from Hoist, but I moved on because Hoist is Hoist, right? And if I was actually, ultimately, I had Hoist, but like he never actually trained me, right? Like he came in once a year and taught a seminar. There was no training. I'm not going to blame him. I could have went places. I could have went to North Carolina. That's where Team Rock was. They were the big thing back in the day. In the 2000s.
I'm very familiar.
Yeah, and Greg Thompson, right, is Team Rock, I think.
He started it. He was. I remember, like I did like an open mat or two back when he was still a purple belt, and he had a school in the back of a gym in Hillsboro, and then all of a sudden it just. He ended up getting the contract to essentially the addendum to the Modern Army Combatives Program is the Special Operations Combatives Program, SOCP, and he authored SOCP. But it's there were other people in the state at the time, like my shoot wrestling mentor and my original BJJ coach was here at the time, and there were some others. So like there's a sore spot there. Like that was Team Rock was like when I first got started teaching at Octagon, Team Rock was our main rivals.
Oh, were they? Yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
They had a branch in Greensboro, and they were a lot more established. Like we were new, we were a young program, and like our mindset was very different. But they were also like kind of our introduction to the side of BJJ that I don't like. Team Rock was their big push was MMA, so a lot of chest thumping, we're the best, the most legitimate, the only real, these really absolute statements. Like they were the ones that were doing a lot of that, starting a lot of the internet flaming, and they like to dojo storm. They'd want to show up to your open mats and hurt your people. And, there's a couple of people that were a part of that they grew up and I buried the hatchet with. There's a lot of people that just completely disappeared because that mindset is not sustainable in the long game in martial arts. But, so it's what it is. Like I try to put it as back as I can so I don't open any old wounds.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. Like every time I stutter, it's because I'm trying to not bring up stuff that might bother people, right? Like anytime anybody hears me pause and there's like, I'm not stupid. I'm just trying to make sure everybody's cool with stuff that we all say. But let me ask you this: speaking of that, yeah, and we'll get back to some of that because there's some cool stories. But did you know Sukari? I think is Team Alliance. Okay. So let me tell you a story about this, and I know he was in North Carolina. To me, like because I don't go to North Carolina, so I can't remember anything. And let me ask you this: is Team Rock were they in 2004-ish? Is that Raleigh Durham? I know nothing about North Carolina, so forgive me for messing up.
Well, Yeah, Hillsboro is in the Raleigh-Durham area, closer to Chapel Hill. But by the time it was over, and Team Rock still has branches throughout North Carolina. So there's still a Team Rock Eden, still the main Team Rock, like in Fayetteville, where like, you know, because of the Sock P connection, there's still Team Rock Charlotte.
Yeah.
Greensboro ended up getting, they sold to an affiliation that like what used to be Team Rock Greensboro, they're like a Hoist affiliate now, but they don't want any of the stigma associated with the old Team Rock associated with them.
And I might loosely know those people. I just don't know the cities. But I actually just ran into a guy. Well, he's a friend of mine, but he was at some kind of military training program the other day, and I think Greg Thompson was there because he asked me if I knew him. So obviously he was there, but he's in his 50s now. But anyway, he said good stuff. He was like, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like that's where, like when Hoist had his first like affiliate get together headquarters thing, it was at Team Rock, and that was 2004. Which was cool, man. Like that was actually, that's when I stopped being with Hoist, but not because anything bad happened there. That's where I got my purple belt. That was in 2004. Great seminar. They had Pedro Vellante, Gui Vellante, whatever. Those guys from Miami, and that's when they were making the switch, where Hoist was very concerned that they're losing. Like everybody's too concerned with sports jiu-jitsu and UFC and I'm not saying MMA on purpose. I'm saying UFC. So they were getting back to the self-defense roots, right? Which is what they thought Helio started, and they wanted the white gis, and so actually at that seminar, even though I got my purple belt in jiu-jitsu, we had to do like 2 days straight of self-defense with Pedro Vellante and his brother, and I'll be honest, like at the time I hated it, because I was like, this is not what I do. But that being said, it's actually been good. I teach self-defense seminars for women all the time, and it's a lot of the material that was based on that stuff and their stuff, you know, whatever. Yeah, it was good. And that's when Greg Thompson, he had this this watch. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was a military watch where you could pull out like a band, and then essentially Ezekiel choke people with your watch. Like each
like a rot.
Yes, it was interesting. Yeah, and a garrote is in Krav Maga is a little bit different, right? But probably similar.
Same kind.
Yeah, so like it was an interesting seminar. I'm forever grateful. I had a roll with like 75 people. I got my purple belt. I thought I was on top of the world. It was fucking amazing. Then that's actually where I met my current instructor, because I came back. Like I just rolled with 75 people, didn't lose to anybody. At best, somebody got a draw with me. I like mostly submitted everybody. I thought I was like king shit. And I get back, and a friend of mine was like, he was a Pedro Sauer affiliate at the time, but he was like, hey man, I just met this guy Marcelo Monteiro. They just moved here from Brazil. You might be interested. Get him in for a seminar. I was like, yeah, fuck it. Let's bring this guy down. I'm gonna see if I can kick his ass. That's literally what I thought. So he's like, yeah, he'll bring his son down. He's a black belt. His son's a brown belt. I was like, yeah, I'll smash these fuckers. You know, that's what I'm thinking, because they're like 150 pounds. I was probably 230 at the time. But anyway, they came down, smashed me enough to where I got in my car after, like I was their ride, so I was taking them to like dinner or something. But anyway, I was sitting in my car waiting for them to come down, and I had gotten beat up so bad by this guy and his son that were 150 pounds that, like, I just questioned my whole existence. I mean, literally, it was sitting in the car, started almost crying. You know, I'm not, I'm like a man, so I'm trying not to be very emotional, but I think when he got in the car, I was fighting back tears, and enough to where he could notice something was wrong. He's like, what's wrong, man? And I think I could barely talk. My chin was probably quivering, and so I think I'm going to quit jiu-jitsu. And he's like, well, like, why? I said, well, because like, you fucking destroyed me. Like, I couldn't even last 2 seconds, and it's like, I don't, and like, not even like a month before I was on top of the world, I thought I was something important, you know what I mean? And it crashed so hard. And he's like, well, that's because you don't know real jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, what the fuck's that mean? Like, I actually took it personal, because I'm like, I'm learning from the source, MFer. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm learning from the crazies. And he's like, well, no, that's old school. Like, you don't even know to put your knee up after you break the guard. You don't know this, you don't know that. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know that because they didn't show me. And I was still like kind of, having their back. And he's like, well, no, that's why, I killed you. It's because you don't know jiu-jitsu. It's not because you're a bad human. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but he was very respectful. Like, I'm not saying it in a bad way still, because he said, look, without Hoist and with those guys, I would not be here. But the point was, I switched, and it opened my eyes, much like our whole conversations, what you're saying. Like, I was a guy that drank the Kool-Aid. I watched the UFCs, and I was like, look, I got to learn from Hoist. And I'm still not saying anything about Hoist. I'm just saying, like, I didn't see him. So I can't also say that I was trained by Hoist, because he showed up to teach a seminar. So I was essentially taught by myself, right? And he showed up to teach a seminar and then correct me, but he didn't really correct me. Like, he showed up for a 2-hour seminar, right? Like, you don't know, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a good fit, right, at the time. But I think Team Rock had more to do with it. I think I was there when Greg got his black belt. I was there when Rob Kamen, he's another famous guy, got his black belt. Shaquille O'Neal was like maybe getting his blue or purple. I can't remember. I do know that I rolled with Shaquille O'Neal, and that was cool. But that was all in that 2004 era, which, again, is a cool. I mean, they're cool stories, but it is interesting asking you, because I don't know the politics behind North Carolina. It doesn't also mean that, like, what I mean? Like, if you're a Team Hoist, like those guys, I think they're still Team Hoist, but I know for a fact that they have, like, I'm just being careful. Like, I'm not saying anything bad. I just know they have seminars, like, outside of Team Hoist. And that was another reason I left Hoist at the time, because I would say, hey, like, this one guy's coming in. Do you care if I have a seminar? And he'd be like, why would you do that? Because there's enough black belts in our affiliation. And I'm like, well, because I live in West Virginia. Like, if somebody comes through and asks me if I want a seminar, I'm going to take it, right? Like, that's ignorant for you not to say that's cool.
Like, right now, it's like not everybody that's a Hoist or AC affiliate is also a part of Team Rock.
Yes.
And so there are people that are Hoist or AC affiliates that, like, they're just philosophically their beliefs, their value systems lie in other places. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But, like, it's interesting because, like, I had a similar disillusioning moment. It's like I started out, my initial launch into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was through the Modern Army Combatives program, and that very much colored my perspective. But I had the option, like, I could go train at this one, at the time they were actually a kayaking school in Winston-Salem, or there was an American Combat Jiu-Jitsu school, which the Professor Maynard, prior service Marine, very geared towards military and law enforcement. That was more essentially what I was told by this one person that knew both parties. He said, you're probably not going to fit in with the BJJ guys because you go too hard. Like, you're too smash. He says, however, the Professor Maynard guys, they're going to like you because of the military affiliation, and, like, your mindset is just going to work better there. And that was how I ended up, like, working with them and getting involved in, like, the whole Hawaiian Jiu-Jitsu, combat Jiu-Jitsu lineage. Professor Maynard, before I was getting ready to go to Iraq in 2005, went into, like, semi-retirement where he wasn't really teaching publicly anymore. And I crossed over to where that same individual that knew both parties was teaching at that BJJ school. And I started working with them before I went to Iraq. And it was exactly what he said. There were people there, especially the guys that were more MMA focused, that they liked my style. They liked the smash mouth, more like judo vibe is essentially what it amounts to. Like, the American Combat Jiu-Jitsu mat work at the time, like grappling at the time, was very informed by, like, Kosen judo. We take you down, we get on top, and we stay on top. And but of course it's also had the punching and the kicking and the self-defense and like pretty much MMA and a gi, but it was battlefield driven. But I started working with them. went to Iraq, was teaching, like we had like we have recently, someone reposted a photo of it, the Anaconda Combatives Club. I was at LS Anaconda, and pretty much we all got together and kind of had our combatives workout, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, whatever you had on board, you brought it, and we all taught each other, had a great time, did a lot of sparring, a lot of like in-house smoker kind of stuff. Came back, and I went back to that same school. And fast forward a couple of years, Octagon MMA had opened. I was made the grappling instructor. I was working on trying to get all the I's dotted and T's crossed in terms of making sure that lineage was correct. We had the proper affiliations, because as you know, like when you set up shop, the first thing that they're going to pick on is the legitimacy of your lineage, of your pedigree.
Yeah.
And if that's watertight, the second thing they're going to look at is your personal competition background. What have you done? And if they can't pick on that, then how are your students performing in competition? And if they can't pick on that, then they just have to tolerate and learn to live with your existence. ... 2021 addendum to that statement, they will find a way to hashtag cancel you for something else, conduct of unbecoming, I'm sure. But I remember, you know, like Luis Togno for the longest time had been like Luis Togno.
Yeah, well, not sorry to cut you off, but that's who I mentioned, Sukari. While you were talking, I just literally just totted down the name Luis Togno. I remembered his name, but I asked you who Sukari is. That was his nickname, but that's who the guy is.
And see, I did not know Togno personally. I'd met him a few times,
yeah.
But I only knew him by his proper name. But
yeah,
been North Carolina representative of the IBJJF, what was going to before the IBJJF was the standard. He was the guy, and when he passed on in a car accident, God rest his soul. It was that mantle was taken up by other people. And I remember when I sat down and had a meeting with that representative at the prodding of a person that someone else I was working with to try to get IBJJF recognition back when I cared about it. You know, we had several phone meetings, and that culminated with me sitting with him at his school. Like I'd just come back from a mission at Fort Jackson. I hadn't even gone home. I drove from Fort Jackson 3 hours north to this guy's school in the Triad to sit down and talk with him.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're sitting down and talking, and what eventually it comes down to is what he says to me. He said that, well, you know, what you do isn't really Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, for one thing, you teach leg locks to white belts. And I said, well, we go to Higheston tournaments, and Higheston allows everything. So if I don't teach them that, then they're not prepared. He says, well, Higheston is not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. To me, it was all grappling. And he went on to say, he's like, what he told me, and this was not a compliment or an objective statement of fact. This was him, and this was an admonishment from this person. And it was very much delivered this way, like him pointing his gnarled little finger at me. And he said, what you do is a hybrid art. He says, you're mixing in judo, combat jiu-jitsu, and this is the way he worded it, some Brazilian jiu-jitsu that you've got along the way. And at the time, I'm like a purple belt, you know, from a Ronin lineage. But like I had proven it, and I'd won things in tournament and proven myself a couple of times at that point. You know, and he said in combatives and whatever else, and catch wrestling. And he said, what you're doing is a hybrid art. It's not really Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So best of luck to you, but we can't work with you.
Interesting.
And that put me off my lunch in a way that I never fully recovered from to this day.
So Lewis kind of screwed you. Is that correct?
No, not Lewis. It was the heir apparent.
Okay.
This was someone else. Luis Togno never said a cross word to me.
So in Lewis, am I correct? Or was that Team Alliance, or do you know? I believe it was.
I don't. I think this person was under a different, not a Gracie lineage, one of the rival lineages.
Yeah.
But being very careful not to give away too much information. But
yeah, same here.
You know, so but it's like it put me off my lunch in a way that I never recovered from. So I got at one point I ended up under Mario Alo, who was his team Euler Gracie, got tested and you know, got a brown belt under him. Yeah. That affiliation broke down for a variety of reasons, and it put me in a situation where I had to figure out what I was going to do next. And I was this close to leaving Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu altogether. No need to ever go back because I had other stuff that I could do. Because I was so disgusted at the way that I had been treated and the way that people had talked to me at that point in time. And it was actually Professor Maynard, my American Combat Jiu-Jitsu instructor, who sat me down with Kai Lee at a Jiu-Jitsu America National Convention in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and said, "You two need to talk." Mm. And Kai had been under Helson, had kind of been stranded and left adrift for he had been a brown belt for bloody 20 years. When one of his students was testing for black under Joe on the mainland, and said, "I can't do this if it means I'd surpass my original teacher." And Joe was like, "Tell me more." And that's how Joe and Kai met. And so Kai got adopted, you know, proved his mettle, showed that he had the worthy chops, and he's been a black belt under Joe since he's been a black belt. He's been a black belt for 15 years now or more. Kai saw the position I was in and how precariously close I was to that's crazy. You're a brown belt, and you're about to walk away from it all because you're so disgusted. And even after that, you know, it's like at this point, I was on a national team at the World All Styles Championships and did an international professional super fight for a championship belt on behalf of the United States and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I did the World Council Jiu-Jitsu Organization World Games in Orlando, Florida the same year, was the only American in my division, faced off against a Brit and an Aussie, and beat them both in the open weight category, representing the United States and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I kind of always been made to feel like I was the champion that BJJ didn't want.
Which doesn't make sense, right?
And so because of all these politics, you know, I'll tell you the one place I've never experienced politics like that, even remotely close, is judo.
I thought you were going to say West Virginia. I was going to say that's because we're stupid, but
there are some names I could bring up from your home state there that might incite riots.
yeah, that's a little different. Well, so Gary, since you're new to North Carolina, this is a little bit of history for you, right? Like that you probably did not, you got to get caught up a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, it is a bit of a history lesson. I know there's some stuff going on right now in Greensboro where new places are opening up across from other places, and I don't know anybody down here, so I'm not burning any bridges that I have. I'm just telling you, I'm just a reporter. But I know that there are places that won't let outsiders roll, and I know that there are places that
they will make you buy a team gi on the spot before you can step on it.
Yeah,
which I think most of us agree. Like if you're doing this or your open mat fee is above, it doesn't matter what number you put. But I think these $25, $30 open mat fees are fucking ridiculous. That means you don't want people at your gym. Period, right? Would you guys agree? Like, if you're doing that kind of stuff, you don't want people there.
Absolutely.
For whatever reason. Then we can argue what the reason is, but yeah, like when people write me from out of town, like, "Hey, what's your mat fee?" I just say, like, donate something. That's all I tell them. Like, I don't say it's $30 and you got to buy a white fucking gi with our thing on it. Like, that means that you're not going to come, and I know that, right? I just show up and give me a good review.
People like that. There is something that they are trying to hide.
I would think the same. I would think. But I know there's other answers. Sorry, Gary.
No. We talked about that today. I had an open mat, and we were rolling today, and we talked about that. Is that and this is my opinion, and I'm not saying that this is law, and I don't, everybody is free to do whatever they want to do. But to me, if you say that you can't let outsiders come in and roll, or if they can't come in for an open mat, or if they pay a mat fee, they don't get to roll, what you're telling me is one of a couple of different things. One, that you have not taught your students what you need to teach them to be at the level that they're at, and you're worried that that's going to be exposed. Or you yourself not rolling tells me that you're not confident in yourself, in your abilities, and what level you're at, and that you don't feel that you're confident and you don't want that to be exposed. Or you're only in it for money. And those, for me, that's the only three things that I can see. Now, I could be completely wrong. I don't know for certain that that's the truth. In any place that has a ridiculous mat fee, if the instructor doesn't roll, or if you don't let outsiders roll, maybe there's something else going on there. And to each their own. You can run your place the way you want to run it. I'm okay with that. I don't care. I'm just not going to go there. If I can't pay,
you're wrong, and I'm right there wrong with you, because I'm on your side with that statement.
I've never been, and I've rolled, and I'm sure everybody here has. I've rolled at a lot of places, and every place that has been inviting and welcoming and told me, hey, listen, you pay your mat fee, and I know you're here on vacation, pay your mat fee, show up, we'll roll, we'll get some work in, maybe you can teach us some stuff, maybe we can teach you some stuff, it'll all be good. Those places have always been legitimate. But if I called up to a place and they said, well, we don't really let outsiders roll here, man, I'm sketchy on you. I'm sketchy on you. I'm just, it tells me that you're trying to hide some inconsistencies at your academy, or you're trying to hide something that's going on there. That's my personal opinion. Those places might be killers. I don't know. But
no, but that's a solid point, though, right? Like, because you need to look. There's been, I'm good on that side, but there's been times, I'll be honest with you, like, I don't roll all the time with people. I'm just fucking lazy, right? But hearing people say things like that changed my tune, right? Because I don't want somebody to come to my gym and be like, well, that guy didn't roll with me, so he's dodging me, right? But it helps. Like, that doesn't hurt anybody. What you're saying, Gary, and what you're saying, Ben, is the same thing. What it does do is tell people like me who are fucking lazy sometimes that's the way that you could be perceived. So you better be ready for that, right? I am on the right side where I say, hey, if you want to roll, just donate something.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm on the right side, but I also will say, I say that, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to roll 100% of the time, because I show up at 4:30 and roll in classes from 6 to 8. I don't always roll from 6 to 8 because I got to get my kids to basketball. I got a bunch of shit to do. I'm doing something different. However, I've since reevaluated shit because of these conversations. And this is why I think this conversation is important, because I don't want to be that guy where somebody said, hey, he doesn't roll. And for example, I'm just going to put this out there right now and just say, like, my friend George Euler, who you know, Gary, he's a great guy, right? He comes to our gym and rolls. But, like, at 6 o'clock sometimes I got to leave at 7 and take my kids to basketball. I got to do this and that. We roll from 6 to 8. That means, like, I'm already in the mindset. I've got to get ready. I don't want to be too sweaty. I've got to get in clothes. I've got to go sit and do this. I'm just in a different mindset. But then hearing conversations like this, I had to reevaluate, and I'll just be honest, like the same thing. And I was like, I don't want George, who's a fellow black belt, he's good. He's a good dude. I don't want him thinking, well, Butch didn't roll with me. He's a fucking loser, and he's scared of me. So then I was like, hey, man, like, next time George comes in, I'm going to roll with him. And we did. But for the same thing, but it's important that we have these conversations, because what you're saying, the same thing. They may be great, but you need to know that this is the way people perceive you. And now I'm in that boat where I was guilty because I didn't put two and two together all the time. So now I do.
Well, yes, but I think it expands more than that, because how many times have we rolled together? It's been 2 or 3 times. We've not had a lot of rounds together, right? Yeah. And so, but I'm more concerned with, like, are you going to let me roll with your other white belts, your brown belts, your blue belts, your purple belts, and see what a I want to see what a Butch Hiles purple belt looks like. I want to see what a Butch Hiles blue belt looks like, right? And if you aren't confident enough in your blue belts and purple belts to act as blue belts and purple belts on the mat, and you're not letting me come in and roll with those guys, then I think that's suspect. And there's never been a time where if I showed up, and before I was a Butch Hiles guy, if I showed up and Bowman was there, you never stopped me from rolling with Bowman to find out whether or not Bowman was legit. And then when I did, I found out that he is legit and that he beat me up.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with all of your guys. Like, all of your guys are who your guys are. And does that mean that they win every one or that they lose every round or anything? Like, no, it doesn't mean anything. It just means they are who they are. And anybody who comes to your academy, if they, you should be willing to let your guys roll. I think it's a good experience for everybody. And there are some places that they don't want it. And I've heard the argument that sometimes, like, I'll wait for Benjamin to get back on here.
I'm back.
No worries. We were just talking about there are some places that don't let their guys roll or let outsiders roll. And I think, some people are, it's like the idea that what you need to learn, you can learn it here. You don't need to learn it outside. And Butch, we've had tons of conversations about this, but
we agree it's bullshit, right?
Yeah, I think cross training is great. You should want your guys to go out and cross train, because whatever they find out, it does two things. One, it goes out, if you as a practitioner go somewhere else and your jiu-jitsu works, then it verifies that what you're learning and what you're doing, or Samba or whatever it is, it verifies that what you're doing is real. But also, if you go out and you take your best game that works at home on everybody that you do jiu-jitsu with at home, and it doesn't do shit somewhere else, all that teaches you that all you've learned is something, you've learned a trick that works against your guys at home that they haven't solved yet.
Yeah.
And you need to make your jiu-jitsu more than that. It cannot just be that, because if you're just beating your guys at your small pond, it doesn't work in the ocean.
Absolutely.
So you should, I want
to figure out who they are. Like there's a journey to this. And, sometimes it's like they need to see that the grass is in fact not greener.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. Or metaphor, whatever the fuck that is.
That, like I had the student many years ago, and he actually got the blue belt blues and was never heard from again. But he and I had gotten into an argument, basically because he was wanting to haggle and debate over gym fees or whatever or not, and so he went around to different open mats in different schools, and eventually realized that there was no place like home. That he needed an instructor that he connected to, that he respected, that kind of kept him on a straight and narrow path. And and even years later, when he was looking at getting back in, he and I had some phone conversations, and I was recommending some places for him. And he was like, well, I want to train at this one place, but I don't want to stop ranking under you. And I'm like, well, they're not going to let you do that, man. And you live 2 states away from me now, and you've got my blessing. You need to go and get back on track. This obviously needs to be a part of your life. But that was all the discouragement he needed, was that he learned some things about himself in the process of that. And that happens. Yes. And when I was at Fort Jackson, I was for a year, I was on mission down there, and I was trying to find a place where I fit in, and eventually settled into a place called Fudoshin MMA, which was a rough and tumble MMA gym, very unorthodox, very focused type place. And of all the places that I had tried out and worked out with, even places that had great pedigrees and lineages, that was the place where I was treated like family. And that's where they had the same work ethic, and they like to train in the heat. They like to train hard. They, you know, pushing towards real goals. It's where I met the coach that I is my coach of record for judo. You know, and he was on the British Army team and the British national team for judo, and we connected at this place. And, you know, but I had to kind of go around, and you got to find yourself, you know, and sometimes like they're not everybody fits in everywhere. People's journeys change. People's the hue of people's energy changes, and it's not always going to be a good fit, you know. So to support the students' development, we have to be willing to let go.
Let me ask you this, Ben. While I was thinking of this, and I kind of know the answer, but it's just to kind of address everybody else. You're well versed in a lot of martial arts. Like, I think we all can agree, the judo and sambo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, American jiu-jitsu for that matter, right? Everything, a little bit of everything. Do you consider yourself, like when you're ranking somebody, this is the question. It's kind of, and again, I'm pausing because I'm having a hard time kind of figuring out the question I want to ask, but what would you consider yourself ranking in? Do you consider yourself a hybrid martial art when you rank somebody, or are you ranking somebody in each individual art? Meaning, like, if I'm a student of Benjamin Rothrock, am I a judo student? Am I an American jiu-jitsu student? Am I a judo student? What am I, and what can I expect when I come to your place?
It depends on that person's individual path. So, like with judo, I don't really promote you. The standards committee for USA Judo does. I just sign off on your packet saying that it's complete and it's right before you send it in. So if Butch Hiles wants to move up the judo ladder, then I say to you, I'm like, okay, well, you're going to get everything you need from here. You know, we can prepare you for this, but it's on you to go to the tournaments and start acquiring points to go up that system. And that is separate. So the judo is its own thing. You have to choose to do that, right? Mm-hmm. For the jiu-jitsu, you know, it's like, okay, if I am your only jiu-jitsu teacher and you're not going somewhere else for BJJ, your Brazilian jiu-jitsu and your combat jiu-jitsu are combined. They're one system. Everything is included on one test. It's not necessarily competition focused the same way, though competition should be a part of it. But like my syllabus is my syllabus, and it's got the stamp of approval from Hawaii, Brazil, and United States. You know, like I submitted my syllabi for my different belt levels to Professor Kai for the BJJ side, to Professor Maynard for the American Combat Jiu-Jitsu approval, and I got it audited by someone that's high level in the Sambo community, just to you know, now sometimes people say, well, I have a specific interest in this. Right? I just want to do the combat jiu-jitsu with you because I'm doing BJJ at Joe Bob's dojo down the road. I'm like, okay, well, the test is the same. The test is no different. But when I cut that person's certificate, it only has the Hawaiian, Japanese verbiage on it, all the BJJs taken out. If a person only wants to focus on their BJJ with me, like I have a process for that, I can do it that way. But it depends on the individual. But if you just show up and want the standard package, you're getting both jujitsus as one complete jujitsu. Does that make sense? It's just one jujitsu. It's all.
It does.
With Sambo, there's no.
Well, yeah. What I would, no, I'm sorry for cutting you off a little bit, but what I'm thinking is, you might provide people with more options. Right? Do you agree with that? I mean, that's super simple. I was going to say more stuff, but let's just stop there, right?
Multiple paths. Yes.
Okay.
So instead of this is the one thing I do and this is all you have. I'm like, okay, let's tailor this to what you want your path to be. And of course I can provide advice and whatnot as I get to know the individual and what I think might better suit them, like some guidance, I guess. But
So if I'm just a guy thinking, look, I want to train. I watch the UFC. Maybe I don't want to fight in the UFC. I don't want to fight MMA, but I'm looking for some stuff. So I just type in a Google search, North Carolina. I'm looking for some stuff. Your name pops up. What can I expect? Which we've already answered that question. But the reason I'm asking it again is because I want to separate you from other people in North Carolina, maybe versus Gary over there, that little motherfucker. No, I'm just playing around. But what can separate you? I'm saying, like, what? And again, I know I've got my answer because I've talked to you for 4 hours plus now. But if I was going to make an ad for you, what separates you from Team Rock, from Gary Hashman? And again, I can only name 3 teams from North Carolina because I'm ignorant. So don't take offense to that Team Rock because I only know your name. What can I expect from the difference there? Does that make sense? Am I doing okay, Gary? That sounded kind of like asshole.
No,
so I'm kind of being an asshole.
And that is the thing, right? Because we're all trying to separate ourselves as far as like who you go and train with, So outside of in Greensboro, why come to Ben Rothrock, right?
So it's like what people tell me is very different. Is like they very much feel the more Olympic mindset of the way that we train, and then regardless of who you are, or what your skill level is, or where you come from, or where you're going, or what your goals are, everyone is trained to that highest standard. Like and it's funny because we always say, why is attendance so bad the nights that I teach the kickboxing class every other Friday?
That like, sounds good. That sounds horrible.
They said because your class is hard.
That sounds rough, right? Yeah.
Because your warm-ups are hard, you make a spar every single class. I'm like, well, that's hashtag sorry not sorry.
Yeah.
So that's one thing is it's that Olympic mindset, and it's that you are going to spend time at all ranges of combat. You will have the meat and potatoes of all ranges of combat. You're going to know how to strike. You're going to know how to close distance. You're going to know how to take people down. You're going to know how to finish on the mat. You're going to have an escalation of force from extreme sport to, like, on this end of the continuum, to battlefield, God forbid, if necessary. And it's like you're going to get the whole enchilada. The best of everything I have.
So you are a kind of a Swiss Army knife of martial arts. That's a terrible analogy, right? But
I guess like that.
I don't mean that in the bad sense, right? I mean that in the best sense, right? Like if I watched UFC and I'm like, I want to know how to fight, but maybe I don't want to do MMA. Then I probably should look for you, though, right? Still, because I want to do self-defense.
Because you'll have options that are not necessarily MMA. So it's like combat jiu-jitsu and combat sambo as a competition platforms are definitely full tilt, but they're still a step down from like balls out MMA, right? Okay. They're as hard as those competition platforms are, they are still they're not quite as full tilt. but then there's also the judo as an option. There's also the Brazilian jiu-jitsu as an option. The sport sambo is an option. You know, so it's like you have the step down and the step up, like, you know, the escalation, you know. You know, so it's like, you know, people will go to a Brazilian, you know, what happens at a lot of schools is that like everything is compartmentalized. You know what Absolutely. I mean? Like, so right now we're working on kickboxing, and now we're working on our wrestling, and now we're working on our jujitsu. To me, those things should never be like this. They should always be like this, you know? And so, when you watch them spar, that compartmentalization is very apparent. You can almost see like the manual transmission grinding gears in their head. Okay, now I'm boxing you. Kicking. Grab. All right, now we're back to boxing again. It's like grinding gears. And because with combat jiu-jitsu and combat sambo, all of those ranges are taught homogeneously from day zero. You know, it's not compartmentalized. You don't have a BJJ guy that has to go to a boxer to learn how to strike, or that has to go to a wrestler to learn how to achieve takedowns. Like if they start with day zero with someone like me, and there are other people out there, they're getting it all from day zero. And it's a lot easier to specialize when you started out as a generalist than to start out as a specialist and then 10 years down the road have to figure out all the stuff that you're missing. It's a lot easier.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's even with the walls of Octagon, which is the place where I teach 3 days out of the week, and I'm somewhere else the other 2. I'm the only generalist. Everybody else has something really specific that they do, that they're really, really good at. But if you take them outside of that environment and stick them somewhere else, it's like you can definitely tell it's their second fiddle. I don't have that same problem. I could cover and substitute in any class that is taught at Octagon, short of women's kickboxing, because I'm never ever going to teach that. And like, you know, you
gotta laugh at that.
You would never know the difference. I could put on cargo pants and a rigger's belt and a rash guard and an operator ball cap, and you would think that I was master Krav Maga guy, no problem. You know?
Are you still actively training fighters in MMA?
I have a few.
I've saw some pictures on Instagram. That's why I'm asking. And I don't know if they're old or new, but good pictures.
Like Theo Raylang, who he just dropped a decision on UFC Contender Series, visits me fairly frequently. Boston's getting ready to go back into. He's already pro before he came to me, but like he's been getting the combat sambo for me. But see, it's like we said, combat sambo, combat jiu-jitsu, MMA. What's the difference? It's the uniform. So if you're training for those two, you're also training for this. If you're training for this, you can put a top on and go back into these two. It's like, so it's ongoing, never stops.
Are you, this is a question for me, just as an individual, are you making money training fighters too? You know what I mean? Like, are you getting it doesn't matter the answer because it's not meant to be, it's not an asshole question, but are you training fighters as like, hey, I get 10% fee or?
No.
Okay. Yeah. It's like a terrible question, but it's the only way I could figure to phrase it. But
I teach, my approach is very holistic. And it's like, I charge enough to justify my time outside of the house, but to still make sure that it is accessible to students that work at factories or that are in college or whatever.
It does. I guess my question then would be like, so if I join your gym and my objective is I want to fight MMA, that's included in the price of your gym. There's no separate, I'm your trainer fee. right? Does that make sense? What I'm asking.
If they were, if you know, with pro fighters, that's different, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But for amateur MMA fighters, they're a student. Like everybody.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
everybody's same. Like I treat the MMA fighter the same as I treat the person that's trying to get their yellow belt.
Okay, that's cool.
And train to this, but the yellow belt is being trained to the same standard as the MMA fighter, and that's that Olympic mindset. Does that track? It's like everyone.
It does, absolutely. What I'm thinking when you say that is, do you follow a curriculum that you've designed or that Tony Maynard's designed, or?
So the syllabus that I use was synthesized from his syllabus. Original syllabus is really vague, and he designed it that way so that subordinate instructors could kind of build on it according to their area of expertise. A lot of Professor Maynard American Combat Jiu-Jitsu black belts came from Isshinryu Karate. So their jiu-jitsu, their version of full contact jiu-jitsu has a much heavier striking bias than mine does. So with me coming from Modern Army Combatives, what I did was I took his syllabus, put it on top of the MACP POI, put the Mario Alo BJJ syllabus just as an example on top of that. All right. When of course the judo is already built into it, you know, a lot of the striking's already built into it. And essentially once I synthesized it, you know, to what worked for my student population, and satisfied the criteria from like all these different places, I submitted this to him. I said, does this meet your approval? Yes. Sent it to Kai. So Kai, even though my ranking with Professor Kai Lee is under Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he's a Danzanryu 8th degree black belt and has black belts in multiple other styles, including striking arts and Savat. So it's like I like Savat kickboxing, like a lot. So he got his standard. Boom.
What's the difference between Savat? Because we know, Gary, this might be quite. We remember Savat from 1993 to 1995 UFC, where they're like, "Here's Savat," but nobody explained what Savat was. What is other than being a French martial art? Am I correct?
It was all that in France. Savat. So there's boxe français, which is the sport version of it. Okay. And they even have like, they wear shoes. Like they have a stylized shoes with a reinforced toe and a reinforced heel with leather that they wear as a part of their contests. They really like kicking people in the kidneys.
Really?
Yeah. So, and they're really good into their toe. So Street Savat was designed for like merchant marines on ships. So a lot of their striking was informed by the presence of like combat boots, like hiding razor blades in the toes of their shoes for the Street Savat. And then like I said, boxe français is the sport version of that. So it has like your standard Western boxing component. They really like calf kicks. They have a much better use of things like hook kicks, slap kicks, side kicks than Muay Thai does. Muay Thai essentially has the teep and the roundhouse. Muay Thai tends to be more stand and bang. Like I'm here, you're there, and it's like this war of attrition. Savat tends to do things off the pump and is like a lot more about cutting angles. They don't like to stand and bang. They don't want to get hit. They want to be in and out. They want to evade. They want to cut funky ankles. They want to take your feet out from underneath you with those calf kicks. The oblique kick that you're starting to see more and more in MMA is a very Savat style kick. Like, so the sachet ba, which is like their fancy name for a side kick with a big swishy chamber to generate more power and force, is meant to be delivered to the quad or the knee, to blow the knee out. But it can be modified for the hip bone to get the head to drop to follow up the power across. I know that's a lot. Does that kind of illustrate the point?
No, absolutely. Now, what I was going to ask is, would you argue that they're more popular with the calf kick and oblique kick before that became popular now? Does that question
they
make
were
sense?
always they.
He looks like he froze again. Gary, would you like to answer that question for me?
Yeah. My savant knowledge is expansive, because of what was it? Gerard
UFC
Gordeau.
2. I don't know if he was savant. I think somebody else was savant.
Nah, I'm pretty sure. We can look it up, but I'm pretty sure Gerard Gordeau in UFC 1 was a savant guy because he was
Jamie,
Dutch.
would you like to look that up? Oh, he's not here. Fuck it. We'll just assume.
I'm pretty sure that Gerard Gordeau was a savant guy. I remember him being touted as a savant guy, but that's all the savant that I know is of UFC 1. Now I'm curious, so I'm going to go ahead and look it up because I don't know. I could be telling lies.
I agree. My phone's busy broadcasting on Instagram, so I can't look it up. But yeah.
Gerard Gordeau is a Dutch former saboteur.
There you go. Look at the shoe.
And he
was also very fucking dirty. If you read Hickson's new book, they talked about how dirty he was, right?
I haven't read it yet. I need to. But it says he was a champion savant and holder of the Dutch champion Kyokushin karate title for 8 consecutive years. So he was
I held maybe the only Kyokushin karate tournament in West Virginia. This was probably in the 2004-ish range. I don't know the dates, but I did. And I had a guy come in, and it was pretty awesome. But we were, that's when MMA was illegal. We were pretty much right on the verge of should that be illegal or should not be illegal, right? So I never did another tournament again. But Kyokushin karate doesn't allow you to punch in the face, but you can kick and knee to the face, which makes absolutely no fucking sense. Right? So it deserved to be on the fringe. And I decided I should never do one of those tournaments again, right? Because it was the first jiu-jitsu tournament I ever did in West Virginia. And I decided to do a K1 rules Kyokushin fight because I was a huge K1 fan. And it went great. I'll be honest, it went great. It was awesome. But then I was like, I don't want to, make the commission mad. I'm trying to do jiu-jitsu only, and I just need to step away from that. And I did. We arguably, because karate and martial arts is legal no matter how you do it, I should have been fine, but I don't come from that background. I shouldn't have been in those tournaments anyway. But I am happy that I brought it to West Virginia. It was a good tournament, whenever that was. I think it was 2002, actually. But anyway.
Well, if I'm being honest, the only thing that I remember, other than Gerard Gordeau being choked out by Coyce Gracie in UFC 1, the only thing that I remember as far as Savant goes is him kicking Teely Tooley in the face and knocking out his teeth.
Tooth stuck, yes.
I don't remember anything else.
And it was a savant guy that blinded Yuki Nakai in one eye.
Was it really?
Yes.
It was really. So that was Japan Valley Tudo. Was that 95 or 96? Do you guys know?
I don't remember exactly, but it was the Japan.
Probably 95. Yeah. So, and just so anybody that knows, and it was awesome because Hickson Gracie addresses that in his new book, Breathe. But he just talks what a true samurai's Yuki Nakai was, a true samurai. I'm sorry, I've been drinking too much, so I'm stuttering. But yeah, that guy had the true, what you mentioned at the beginning, the Bushido spirit, where that guy got his ass beat for the majority of the fight, blinded for his entire life, and actually completed that fight and won and fought Hickson.
He hid the fact that he had been injured for a long time because he didn't want it to somehow reflect badly on the sport or the process of the sport going mainstream. And that was how he got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because he could still do that even with his issue. My first true Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, my lineage goes back through him to Yuki Nakai. So Anthony Huss, who was a black belt here Anthony Huss was a peer of Greg Thompson, Luis Togno, Joe Hurst, and Kevin Piles, those guys that were like really the original North Carolina BJJ scene. Huss had been in Japan for like 10 years before that. He'd gotten there through the Navy, stayed there after he discharged from the Navy for 10 years, had been an All Japan MMA champion twice, had been on the pancrase scene out there, had been doing the Shudo scene, combat wrestling, and he was originally Team Paratisa through Enzo, and then ended up under Mock Dojo. As a matter of fact, if you look Mock Dojo up, you'll still find references to Huss, like in some of their verbiage. But Huss was awarded his black belt over the phone by Yuki Nakai.
So what? This reminds me. What? Random question. What's Joe Hurst up to nowadays? Do you know? By chance? Not a clue. Do you know who that is, Gary? By chance?
I know that I've heard the name. I know I've heard the name, but I don't know.
Joe was the person that did the World Bud Cup.
Yeah,
in the first tournament in North Carolina, and it was an international meet. The chief referee for the first one or two was my old coach, Wayne Anthony Huss.
That's what and Ben brought this up in the first podcast, but a lot of people, if you don't know the old school, that was the first non-IBJJF major tournament. It was sponsored by Budweiser, hence the name Bud Cup, right? But I mean, it ran for, I'm going to guess 3 to 5 years, but it was getting major, especially that's when MMA TV, the underground, whatever you call it, by Carrick Genesee was out. That was the first major tournament that wasn't IBJJF. Ben, you probably know more because I was trying to jump off the heels of them because I was trying to run some stuff in West Virginia with their blessing, but things. But I mean, it was a major. That was a dude. I Joe Hurst still on my social media. That was major. I'm just gonna throw that out. I'm giving props to Joe Hurst. That was a major. Like that was a huge tournament.
I mean, he brought that attention to North Carolina, and I think that's why North Carolina has become like a hotbed in its way for like up and coming athletes of all flavors. North Carolina has had some big jiu-jitsu people come out of this state. We are starting to see more of our MMA up and comers from like the Charlotte area, Team Higheston, the old Team Rock, various places like starting to get onto some big shows. Like my part-time student Theo was on UFC Contender Series, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
We held the Sambo National Championship here, this year, and are starting like other than like Brooklyn and certain places in California and Philadelphia, this has become like a pretty decent little concentration of like, Sambo enthusiasts and interested parties. There are judo players that have come out of North Carolina that like were junior Olympians and have won international level medals, and they're all here, and just so people like Joe Hurst can, like him, love him, or hate him, positively contributed to that. No two ways about it.
Well, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I want to do with this podcast in particular is shine a light on people like that. Like, for example, if Gary didn't hear about Joe Hurst, the Bud Cup, that was fucking huge in the beginning of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That was fucking huge in the beginning of tournaments in Jiu-Jitsu. I mean,
I got a bronze belt in that tournament one year.
Yeah, I mean, that's when Dale Earnhardt was like something special in NASCAR. Like, honestly, like he was tagged to that. I don't think he had anything to do with it, but he was tagged to it.
The tournament was held in the Caribus Arena in Concord, and the Roush, one of the big Roush racing complex is in Concord. So yeah, that's kind of why. They did a really good job of like getting peripheral interest in that event, like any way that they could, So yeah, I did one of those one year, and it I don't even remember what happened after that. Like, I think that like it's like after that year, this was like 2009 or 10ish. They it turned into the Monster Cup. Like
Yeah.
they got energy drinks, and then it just kind of Naga became huge. The highest on tournaments were a thing. U.S. grappling hit the scene, and like all around that time, that was, there was a period of history where I was doing 1 or 2 BJJ events a month, like all the way through blue belt and purple belt. Like I was really, really busy. And I felt like if it was within 2 hours drive, like I was obligated to go. Like, I would feel bad if I was like injured or had some kind of military obligation where I couldn't actually go and compete.
No. Well, that's a good point for what you're saying. For people that don't know, again, it almost sounds like I'm saying like back when I was a kid, I walked 2 miles uphill in the snow and the 2 miles back home to my house in the snow, right? But that's the thing. There was no tournaments back then. So like, and I bring this up for my own personal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu career, but like people say like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? There was no fucking such thing. Like back when Ben was there and I was there and Gary probably, I know you got into things a little bit late, but like still like there was no such thing as Naga. There's no such thing as grapplers. There was no such thing as anything. That's when I was competing. I was doing these little tournaments. And then I remember like Naga came out. Still, like you would have to go to New York or you'd have to travel pretty far to do them. Wasn't a big thing. Then the Bud Cup came. That was a big thing. And that was North Carolina. But still, like I would, from West Virginia, have to travel to North Carolina. So it still wasn't a thing. Like I had people from my team, they competed in Naga. But it wasn't like Ben over his right shoulder has a Naga belt. There was no such thing. It was not a thing. I remember like one of my teammates, he fought this guy when Naga was first starting. Anyway, it was not a big deal, but and he won. I can't remember these people's names, but anyway, he won. It was not a big deal. It was like, but I just remember the guy that he fought. His name was David something, but anyway, he was training with Henzo and flying people into train. My training partner kicked his ass, and he was training with me like I'm nobody. And that's why I remember it, because it was funny, because I'm like, this guy's flying people in from Henzo Gracie and all these famous Gracies, and my training partner's flying, like not flying me in, but he's like, we're meeting on Saturday to train, and he beat these guys. But the point was, there was no such thing. And then Kip Collar created Grappler's Quest, right? And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, he got in trouble because, whoever did Naga was associated with MMA TV or the Underground. They thought he stole the list and was getting people's addresses or email addresses from this list he stole, whatever. I may be making shit up, but there was only 2 fucking grappling organizations, and they were super rare. That was Grappler's Quest and Naga. And Bud Cup that Ben knows about. There's nothing. And anyway, that was what I'm in West Virginia. I'm like, look, we have nothing to compete in. How about I make my own thing? And I made, is now called the WVGO, West Virginia Grappling Open. But I just created my own thing. And I was like, well, in West Virginia, we have nothing to do. How about I just create something for us to compete in? I wasn't even thinking of a grappling organization, right? It's got a name now, and it's still small. It's still a regional tournament. But I was giving us an option if you couldn't train in California or New York or all these places or Las Vegas that the Grappler's Quest and Naga were going to, because they're going to the big markets. I'm like, what do you do if you're in West Virginia? What do you do if you're in Ohio? Ohio is now a fucking hotbed, as Gary knows. That's where he comes from. North Carolina's a hotbed.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were.
Joe Morera story. A story that Joe told me is that Joe Morera was a Brazilian national judo champion. And the reason that was even a thing was because when he was an active competitor, there was in Brazil, there was maybe 1-2 jiu-jitsu things a year.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to compete regularly, judo was the most closely related art. And of course, that was when judo was still really judo. And, like leg grabs were still allowed and like they had more time on the mat. And he ended up becoming a national champion, and he got to go and train and compete at the Kodokan in Tokyo. Like, because he'd been the national champ. Oh yeah. Joe Morera. He got like silver in the Tokyo Worlds or something crazy like that, in Japan. And he knows that I'm a judo guy and Kai's a judo guy. And then my buddy here, Vernon Kirk, who's also the marketing and public relations director on the board for the Southeastern Sambo Association and a BJJ black belt and a judo black belt. He and I always work together at the Joe seminars, right? Because Ruben Carrico is an offshoot this way of Joe, and then Kai, and then me. And so me and Vernon have been friends for years. And me and Vernon work together, and Joe comes over and gets in his stance, and when he talks to us over his shoulder like this, and he says, "I'll tell you my secret." And we're like, we're listening. Yeah. And he says, "I just do what my judo coach tells me."
Like you think, right? Yeah.
Joe just validated that meme about like, the Mr. Bean meme where BJJ is like copying off of judo's paper. It's like Joe just validates it in a sentence.
Yeah, which is crazy, right?
I love Joe. Joe's terrific.
He is. And we started off the whole podcast with saying, I think these are the stories that people like to hear, is like where all this stuff come from, right? And it's amazing that in a small part, all three of us have been a part of the beginning of tournaments, ranking, all, jiu-jitsu in America, judo in America, sambo in America, more so than us. But it's amazing because we forget sometimes, like I forget, right, until other people mention on these podcasts that this shit ain't been around that long for us, right? In America, in the world, yes, but for us, no. We're, even if you're talking 100 years, we're in that fucking history. We're in that shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like when we're talking about Hoist Gracie and Team Rock and Luis Togno, we're talking in the last fucking 10, 20 years. It's not very long, right? Like, that's crazy. No, like these stories are going to be something big in what you're saying, the grand scheme of things. It's going to be something big. It might be a footnote, but it's a footnote that's important. It's important to the history of West Virginia. It's important to the history of North Carolina, and important to the history of Ohio. I'm mentioning all the things that we're part of, but it's important to those histories. I remember I remember when Helson started the Arnold Classic. It wasn't Helson that started the Arnold Classic. It was actually some other dude that had nothing to do with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Joe Saylor, actually, who's a judo guy. I don't know if you know him, Ben, but do you know him, Gary? Joe Saylor, right? So when the Arnold Classic started, the
Joe
judo
Neely runs the Sambo component of Arnold Classic. Like, I know Joe Neely, Sambo Joe.
So when this all started, it was a Japanese jiu-jitsu / judo thing / by Joe Saylor, who was one of the Olympic coaches. But anyway, it was like you had to be accepted. And I was on the first thing. I think it was in 2000. I don't know, whatever the first Arnold was. And then it branched out to Helson ran it for several years with Joe Morera. That's where a lot of those stories that I know came from. And then from Joe Morera became Grappler's Quest, Naga, Kumite Classic, Grappling Industries, whatever the fuck they are. You know what I mean? It's like 9,000. I've been approached to run the Arnold Classic as well. ADCC ran it one year. I mean, it's been so many people. But to us in Ohio and West Virginia and PA and blah, 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 that is our shit. Like, right? The Arnold Classic here, am I right? That is our shit. That's 2,000 plus competitors signing up for a 2-day event. That's amazing. Much like the Bud Cup was in the early 2000s, was very similar to Arnold Classic, which is much like the IBJJF to the day. we just had a bunch of friends, Gary and I, and probably Ben as well, compete in the Masters World in Las Vegas this weekend.
Yeah, sure did. Some of our cousin affiliates with John Shell and Hubi of Carico, that other Joe Morera lineage, they had some people there this weekend. They sure did.
Yeah, so I mean, it's amazing how this all ties together, and it's also amazing, especially for Ben and I, and Gary as well, but definitely Ben and I, that we've been part of this stuff since the '90s, inadvertently, right? I wish this was a plan because I'd look like a fucking genius. I just walked upon it, and it just so happened. So I've got some great stories. I got some great stories about Sucre and Louis Togno that I'm not going to share. Because we've been at about 2.5 hours now, and I don't want to ruin some shit. But what I want to say, these have been great. What's up with the President's Cup coming up? Let's tie it all back together. The President's Cup is now. Is that correct? Or no?
The USA Judo President's Cup is next weekend.
Okay.
And it's going to be in Texas, Dallas, Texas. So it's going to be like it's a point tournament for people that are trying to be on the Olympic ladder for judo. And then this will be the first time that USA Judo has introduced the judo submission grappling, which is a lot closer to like the old Kosen judo rule sets that allow for a lot more mat time. They allow that shift where it's more like 30% standing, 70% ground, as opposed to the other way around. And you can get an ippon from submission, and other than that, it's like, throws and pins are worth points. And so it's like allowing the leg grabs again, like straight leg locks and straight knee bars are going to be allowed for advanced divisions. And so they're doing it as an exhibition. It doesn't count as points towards the Olympic acceptance, but the individual wins still count towards like individual ranking promotions, like for your belt levels. But of course, the main thing would just be standard judo shiai. So I am doing Masters 2 for under 100 kilos. So that's my big focus. So
that's a huge accomplishment, right? To be included on that.
Yeah, in a way, because you have to at least in order to do Masters divisions, not only do you have to be over 30, but you also have to at least be a brown belt. Like novices are not allowed to do Masters divisions. Like they would have to go do novice or something else.
Yeah.
So I actually have a question. If I wanted to get involved in judo, or if I wanted to learn judo, or if I wanted to start getting rank in judo, aside from training with somebody like you, what do I need to do? Because I'm interested in, as far as like learning jiu-jitsu and starting a jiu-jitsu path, because I would love to start my path towards black belt in judo as well. What do I need to do?
Start competing. It's like get a USA Judo. You have to have a membership in one of the big three because that's like your liability insurance. Mm-hmm. That's also how they track your promotions, and it's a lot easier and a lot less red tape than like IBJJF. So we'll start there. It's like a whole different world because it's Olympic. It's not for profit. So you get a USA Judo membership. Like you start competing in tournaments, like appropriate for your skill level. It's easy at first because like when you're a white belt, everybody's worth points. Mm-hmm. But as you go up in rank, people, if they're not close enough to you in rank, they're not worth the same. Like, so me as a black belt, if I beat up a green belt, that's no points for me. And it's one of the reasons why I go to ranked tournaments in terms of like Olympic ladder, because then the medal is worth a block of points if I win the medal, like just in case that happens, but like I said, in Masters divisions for like ranked tournaments, they have to at least be brown. But so you keep track of your win. All we care about is your wins. We don't care about your losses. Like, so losing does not take points away. You start keeping track of your wins, and then like once you have enough, like you go to a regionally certified coach. Like hopefully you're training with somebody. Like I'm a regionally certified coach. So I sign off. We print out your packet, have all your supporting documentation, sign off, send it into USA Judo, and then you'll get an email once it's registered in the system and your certificate comes forth shortly. So it's like there is like a minimum time and grade, and how minimum that is depends on how quickly you are acquiring points through competing. It is possible in non-COVID times to get Shodan first black and never leave North Carolina, South Carolina, just do the local tournaments, because we have enough here and we have enough people participating in judo in these two states. Now, once you get up to second black and beyond, you're probably going to be in the same boat that I am, where you got to go fly someplace, for a ranked tournament, because that's just what's going to be necessary. Like your guys that get like 4th and 5th degree and like are less than 50 years old are generally people that have been competing internationally in judo. So it's like a legit judo black belt that got it the right way. Give that person a lot of space, because they had to fight a lot. They had to win matches to get there.
Right.
So it's really that simple. It's like when people say, well, how do I get involved with Sambo? Like, really, you already are. You're training. You're like, if you're doing jujitsu, you're doing the mat work component of Sambo, right?
Right.
So if you want to be a Sambo guy, get a Kurtka, go compete in tournaments. Once you've got a couple of medals, well, now you've got what you need to kind of start a club under the affiliation of someone that's, probably got national level medals or higher. Where do we know one of those?
Right.
So like when people ask me, like, well, especially if they want to affiliate with something like All American Sambo, they're, like I said, they're a lot more user friendly. The USA Sambo is going to get you to the international stage because they handle the U.S. team, but they're very reluctant to credential people. All American does not have the access to the international car, but when you come back home from international stuff, they're more willing to give you the blessings that you need to be an instructor, because they're like standards. They're all Masters of Sport international class, prior Soviet military, a lot of them, Sambo 70 graduates, which is like, the lineage is legit. So anybody that says, hey, I want to do Sambo, and I'm like, well, step number 1, start competing. Step number 2, once you've got some medals and you want to register your club, just write me down as your coach of record, and All American will all of a sudden know who you are, because they know who I am. And it's exactly that simple, and I don't need anything for it. Like the whole point of Southeastern Sambo Association was to make it accessible to people with as little red tape as possible. Like I remember how hard it was to get into BJJ back when empires were built on the backs of blue belts that were filling in the gaps with either wrestling or judo, whatever they had. And that's why North Carolina's BJJ for a long time was very smash, was because it was our wrestlers and our judoka that were filling in the gaps of the blue belts. Yeah. So, but it was a ton of red tape. It was like getting affiliated, getting someone that would rank you. Like it was just hard. So me remembering that, it's like I vow that I will always credential people according to how they perform and make it otherwise as easy as possible to cut through that red tape that I always dealt with. And I've invested a lot of time and a lot of mileage and a lot of money to be able to do that for people in my chosen arts. Because I'm part of that Olympic mindset is not for profit.
Nobody understands those things that you just said, right? The blood, sweat, tears, the money that you've invested for your students, for the things that you'll never get back. And as a coach, all 3 of us understand what that means. But I don't think as a student, everybody understands what that means, right? Like we give up our blood, sweat, tears, our equity, meaning that we see a new student, we think they have potential, we give everything we've got, they may or may not stick with it. Nobody understands how important what you just said is. You've given your life's work to fix what you thought was not correct. Am I phrasing that correctly, Ben?
Yeah. I agree with all that. And it's like, I think to myself a lot of times that, like, it's almost a shame that there's any sour grapes or any bad blood amongst the old school guys that have been doing this as long as we have, because we're the ones that are still here. We're
Mm-hmm.
our only real peer, because it's like, over time people trickle off, you know, and I mean, it's like, you're always, ego is always going to be a part of this. And, egos are prone to bruising and whatnot. So you're going to have the bad blood and the sour grapes and hatchets that would be better buried but haven't been, and that's going to happen. But and I think that's what I mourn more than anything. But sometimes it's like, I'll get an email every great once in a while from someone that I don't even remember having put hands on that person. They were with me so briefly, but something that I said stuck with them, where they felt compelled to tell me about it years after the fact. And it's like moments like that I'm like, okay, this has been worth it. This has absolutely been worth it. And to leave it better than I found it. Because as you guys probably both know, like, there's charlatans and scoundrels and people that will take your money, people that will take you for a ride. There are like martial arts seems to be a hotbed for narcissistic personalities, for people that they're not in it for the art, it's for their ego. And there's a very plentiful supply of the people that are searching for their Master Yoda or their Mr. Miyagi to feed into those narcissistic personality types. And what I do is hard, and my delivery system for it is hard. It is uncompromising. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worthwhile. I can see why it is that, like, people would say, what Ben does is too difficult. I'm going to go here where I can get my blue belt in 18 to 24 months. And, okay, I hope that you find yourself there. But if it is the people that have stayed the course, it's been worthwhile. And I've enjoyed watching those people grow. And it's like, I know that they're going to pass good things on to the next generation. But it needs to be hard. It needs to be a crucible. That's something that, like, the next generation is very much lacking. They don't have the rites of passage. They're not being put in situations where they learn that they have a reserve of like inner strength and inner toughness that they didn't realize that they had. They've never been put in a situation where, failure simply wasn't an option. And Marshall, I've been working on my doctoral thesis for my PhD in martial arts studies, and I actually was writing about that. One of the things I've been writing about that the overarching principle of all of this is the cultivation of the individual's spirit. So whether you were striving for athletic excellence or self-defense or whatever it is, and those two viewpoints will fight all the time. If you did not become a better person at the end of your road when you're on your deathbed, then you wasted your time. And that's what, I'm trying to provide. Everything good about me came from the military and martial arts. And to me, those two things are inseparable. They're the same. One begets the other. And so I'm trying to pass that on to other people.
I think honestly, I think that's the best way to end tonight. It really should be about martial arts and making yourself better, making everybody better. And so I thank you for what you're doing. We still need to hook up. You're just over the hill, you're right down the road from me. So we need to get together, and I need to come train with you. So
doors open 5 days a week, my friend. You can
love it. I appreciate it. Some things we need to hit on. Speaking of competition and whatnot, WVGO 11/20, so November 20th. There's a WVGO happening in Charleston, 11/27, the Sambo North Carolina, South Carolina state championships, right?
Yes.
And so Benjamin's got that going on. East Park on 12/11. What's happening there?
I am coming to teach a Sambo seminar, a Sambo submission grappling seminar, and it's open to all styles and all skill levels and all affiliations. It's just a $20 donation that mainly goes to just cover costs and to help out with, because that's Chet's not-for-profit school. So, making it real accessible to everybody. And so whether someone is wanting to see what Sambo is up close and personal, or they're just trying to figure out how to take some Sambo concepts to integrate into whatever it is that they do, it's like everyone is welcome, and I will be happy to see them, and everyone will be treated as family, one big ohana. So it will be a teaching day, 3 hours of power.
Love it. And then January 23rd, we're trying to get Jeff Glover in up in Charleston, right, Butch?
Yes, it's either going to be Jeff Glover or Jake Shields. So 2 badass jiu-jitsu guys. We hope to see you there. I also wanted to add, the whole time that Ben was talking, I like your face. I don't know what Joe Morera was saying. But I've been thinking this the entire hour that you said that. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with his face. So I just wanted to add that as a closing thing. You're beautiful, Ben.
The alcohol set in. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. So, Gary, take us home, man. I'm good with everything. We can end on Ben being beautiful. Beautiful Ben Rothrock.
Ben is beautiful, guys. Thank you again for another amazing night. Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us for a second episode. Like I said, I need to stop dilly-dallying and find some time and come over and say hi and let you beat me up a little bit. Butch, thank you. You guys, Ben, you're my friend now. Butch, you've been my friend for a while, and I love spending time with you guys. And thank you so much.
I hope to see everyone soon. Thank you for having me.
All right. Good night, guys.
Yeah, killer podcast, guys. Thanks for a great part 2, and have a great night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Bless.